Hello, good evening. It's Wednesday and this is PM Express Corporate Wednesday. Now, the dust seemed to be settling down after the nation was plunged into what could be described as arguably the worst disaster this year. The Melcom Achimota branch collapsed on shoppers, passers-by and staff exactly a week today, killing 14 people, as put out by confirmed reports. Now, the indications are that Melcom's life insurers have limited the process to compensate disaster victims found to be covered by the company's insurance policy. This is raising the relevance of life insurance both by employers and individuals. Tonight we'll examine what lessons businesses can draw from the Melcom disaster from the insurance angle. Do businesses stand to gain from insurance cover, and why should individuals be insured at all? Well, you can get insights from insurance practitioners as you text your contributions and comments and suggestions by to text code 1760, or you can post them on our Facebook wall. My name is Stephen Anti, and I'll go straight to my guest in the studio tonight, Edgar Redu, who is an insurance practitioner. It's great to have you here, sir.
Thank you, my brother.
Welcome.
Good.
So, the Melcom disaster raises these concerns which I have enumerated in my introduction. Should we or should we not be concerned about, disasters in an insurance situation?
Well, let me say good evening to viewers. The issue that we have on our hands is not necessarily the Melcom disaster, but as individuals, we are confronted with so many types of risk by the day. As you sit in your chair, the leg could just get off, and in the process, you could get hurt.
I could splint my spine.
Exactly. As you move even in your house, waking up from bed, going to the bathroom, something can just trigger, and that could cause some disaster to your body. Not to cite the Melcom issue, but as we sit in the studio here, this roof can come on us. Risk is everywhere. The problem is that when it happens, what happens to you? You have...
So this is a question everybody should be asking himself, whether in a work situation or in a home environment.
In a home environment, any place. At any point in time, wherever you are, there is a risk. There has been situations where stray bullets have just come to hit people. There are situations where explosions take place. You're sitting in your home, there's an explosion 2 doors away, be it a boiler or something, it passes through the roof, you're sitting in your house, it comes and lands on you. The risk is so many. Your life is a going concern. By the day you live in, you have responsibilities, you have other things you got to take off. When some of these things happen, it means automatically your life is cut short. If it is not death, then it means it is probably a permanent disability. It could result in amputation. It could result in, as you talked about, your spine, so you cannot move forward, what have you. Your very sustenance, life, in terms of employment, is cut short. How then do you continue life? So, the insurance is very crucial here, because at the end of the day, some compensation is paid to you. The compensation that is paid to you is what will guarantee your continuous sustenance till your God calls you. So, for instance, if you have a personal accident insurance worth probably maybe 200,000 Ghana, and you receive compensation, and you put it into some investments, and every month you're even getting 2% or something on it, at least you guarantee that you're not going to go hungry. So the issue of insurance is not something that we should look at as by the by, or it is just for companies and all that. It cuts across just companies. But the issue of business relations, everyone is in business to grow the business, make good profits out of it. So when investing in such a business venture, there's a need for you to protect the business. We all know what fire can do. Fire can just gutter a whole multi-complex. And you want to ask yourself, how much money was sunk into the putting up of that structure? Your failure to realize the importance to protect that investment, assuming it was even a loan you picked up from somewhere, how are you going to repay the loan?
So Mr. Radio, let's narrow down to the Melcom specific situation. Now, a company, a shopping mall like that, like the one which collapsed, typically, what type of insurance would the owners take?
Well, to start with, first of all, so far as you have employees, you need to protect them. But by our own laws of this country, we have what is known as the Workmen's Compensation Act.
And what does it say?
Basically, what it says is that compensate your workers if they should get injured or they should suffer death as a result of the work they're doing. We call it in the course of their duty. If they should get injured or die, you got to pay compensation to them.
But is there an enforcement clause in this workmen's compensation? For example, is there anything which makes it mandatory for employers to offer compensation?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It is a law of the land.
Okay.
It's just like we have motor insurance. It is a law of the land. But there are two sides to it. One side being that the employer may decide to do an in-house self-insurance, okay? And that, okay, if someone is injured, the labor department takes over. Based on the doctor's assessment of the injury, they give certain compensation, percentages, if it is disability, deformity, what have you. Based on that, then labor department would use their basics of calculation. Normally, what they do is that if it is death-related, you are paid 5 years salary, or someone will say 60 months. Yes, that's right.
So if, for example, somebody earns 100 Ghana cedis, which I know many of the shop attendants earn, so then you have nothing, really. You just have 100 times 12 times 5.
Yes.
Very meager.
Very, very meager. If it is a matter of incapacitation, disability, what have you, the percentage is given by that of course is multiplied by your salary, and that is for 96 months. Okay, so you look at that and then the compensation is paid. But one of the interesting things is this: for employers who do not want to be saddled with these problems, they pass this risk to the insurance company for a premium. So when any of such problems happen, the labor department would advise the employer, you are supposed to pay Mr. X so much. All they do is then they forward it to the insurance company because they've passed that risk to the insurance company. Then the insurance company then makes the payment to the employer, who in then will then deal with the labor officers, and then the transaction takes place there.
Wow. So it's not that simple, right? Is it that simple?
Very simple.
Very simple.
Very simple.
So tell me what, under the circumstance, if I was starting a new business, and for example, I'm employing 10 people to do some kind of work for me, whilst I'm thinking about their salaries, I should be thinking about their insurance too,
because
in the event of death.
You are legally liable. You see, you are legally liable because if injury is sustained in the course of work, you are legally liable. But to the answer to the question, we talked about the workman's compensation. You're asking what sort of insurances that a business entity must have, right? That becomes a little optional, but by law, the workers, that one, you have to protect them. As to whether you want to protect your business or not is another matter. But then if you want to go into the details of making sure that your investments are secured, the first thing you look at is what are the normal risks. Even act of God comes in. At times we see floods and all that. These are all acts of God. We haven't suffered earthquake in this country, but then
this country is an earthquake zone.
We haven't suffered.
So do insurance companies receive a lot of insurers wanting to insure themselves against things like quakes?
Under the fire policy, earthquakes is an additional peril, and these days you hardly get people taking just fire. They take all the associated risk, that perils that are under the policy. So you can have earthquake, you have flood, you can have burst pipes. Okay, that is another aspect of it that could be incorporated into them. And for serious business owners, they go beyond that and take business interruption policies. The business interruption policies are policies that would give you compensation for losing profits. Like, for instance, if Malcolm has this kind of policy, it means as they are losing their profits by the day, right?
The insurance is mopping up the
profit. Insurance will be paying the profit. If you have to shut down your, how do you call it?
Facility.
The facility for maybe 6 months, you decide on the indemnity period. You could factor even your workers' salary into it, so that for the 6 months that you hope to come back to life, all the 6 months, insurance companies will be making payments to your workers, right? Taking into account your, your profits, as well as your goods that have been insured, right? If the building were supposed to be theirs, the building. So, in effect, you lose nothing. This is what we call proper indemnity, putting you back in the position you enjoyed before the unfortunate happening.
So it means despite the losses at Malcolm, it's very possible Malcolm will be on its feet up and running again, especially the Achimoto shop.
If they took the right policies, as I'm just enumerating here.
But everyone will expect that a big company like Malcolm should take the right policies. Cutting corners might be a problem.
It is not necessarily so. Yes, you may expect that a big company like Malcolm should do that, but at times when you examine the policies, it may not necessarily be like that.
Do you have any inside information you can share with us about the actual status of Malcolm's insurance?
What I know, I mean, from the industry is that they insured the goods, the stock in trade. They insured them with Vanguard assurance. And then Vanguard have actually come out and said that, well, they are yet to go through the processes and what have you. The building belonged to one Nana Bedu or something.
Yeah.
That building was insured by SIC, okay? We have a situation where, Glyco Life has also come out to talk about a life policy that they had. Well, I want to believe it's a group life policy that they had for the employees, okay? Beyond that, we don't know what other policies that may be in place.
So an insurance for the structure, an insurance for the goods in place, and a life insurance for the staff.
Yeah.
That must be completing the equation. Malcolm should have no problem.
Not at all. There's one danger there. The danger is to do with the public. Okay, the danger is to do with the public. Because when you are operating a commercial venture, it is purely the public that you are inviting to patronize your business, right? So if you don't have an insurance that takes care of that legal liability, then you have a big problem. And from what I know, that particular policy that was issued does not take full cover for the liability that they have actually gone for. They talked about how many people being members of the public. They mentioned the figure, I've forgotten the figure that they mentioned. They said that the 12 that were dead are members of the Malcolm family, or should I say employees or something. And a certain number were, I think, probably the public waiting to enter the shop. Now, the problem we have with that particular policy, I've always talked about it as that the National Insurance Commission erred greatly in that particular regard. Because, you see, you want innocent people should not suffer. Innocent people should not suffer. And then the real essence of that law was to protect third parties, the innocent people. But unfortunately, in the implementation of that law, asking the insurance companies to underwrite that particular policy, the limit that they placed for the third-party liabilities is totally inadequate.
How much?
10,000 Ghana cedis. So what it simply means is that if at a point in time you had about 400 people in the shop and they all suffered this problem, it means that 400
and they were all third parties. I mean,
yes,
third parties. They were not staff, they were members of the public who were minding their own business.
Then you are saying that the 400 people should go and share the 10,000 Ghana cedis. You see? And this is where I do have a big problem with the National Insurance Commission.
Well, let's go on the phone line now and speak to Achu Menyawovo, who is the CEO of the Ghana Insurance Association. He's joining us on the phone now. Thanks very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you, and my apologies for not being able to join you in the studio.
That's very... Can you hear me, sir? I am afraid we just lost Achu Menyawovo on the telephone lines. We'll try again to raise him and then we'll continue the discussion from there. So, Mr. Redu, let's come back to what we were discussing. So, it means that it just means that the liabilities of the companies, insurance companies, in the situation of the third parties, have been limited.
It's not a question of saying limited. I mean, it's very difficult to get the right word to describe it.
Limited is not the right word.
Limited is not the right word.
Curtailed is also not the right word. I mean, obviously, if in a situation of Malcolm, 5 people died, and the third-party insurance covers 10,000 Ghana cedis, it means the 5 families whose family members died will have to share this amount.
Yes.
But that is also dependent on whether an application will be put through first, right? Or it's automatic?
Of course, yes, of course. I mean, they would have to apply because, first of all, you got to make sure that you pay monies to the right person. We'll need, the police report to confirm that Mr. A actually was part of what happened, and then this and that. And then the normal letters of administration and what have you, just to make sure that monies are being paid to the right people, okay? But one of the problems we got is this, that, you see, even the Workman's Compensation Act itself is not adequate to compensate for the injuries and then the loss of
Not
life.
adequate?
It's not
How
adequate.
much is recommended in the Workman's Compensations Act?
No, as I just
Or
said,
is not quantified?
no, as I said to you, it is if it's death, it is your salary 5 years.
5 years, great.
That's right.
You said that, yeah.
So just as you rightly said, if somebody is receiving 100 Ghana cedis, so times 12 times 5, you get it.
Right.
It's not. Right. But in this particular, there is another provision under the Workman's Compensation. Right. The Workman's Compensation doesn't deal with negligence.
Right.
Good. But then where there's a clear case of negligence, then you can exercise your rights under the common law.
Okay. Mr. Redo, I'll hold you there again and go back onto the phone lines. Humphrey Amegado is the Honorary Secretary of the Ghana Institution of Surveyors. He's also joining us on the phone now. Good evening, sir, and thanks very much for your time.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity.
Right. The Ghana Institution of Surveyors, I know that since the Malcolm disaster occurred or took place, you've made comments about it. But I need you to, again, tell us, from your estimation, how much cover you expect from the point of view of the institution to go to the various victims when it comes to insurance?
Yeah, when it comes to insurance, what the Ghana Institution of Surveyors expects to be in place, first and foremost, is that the evaluer, the evaluation and estate officer or evaluation and estate surveyor would have been tasked to have ascertained the true value of the property after completion. That's before even Malcolm moved in. So when the true value of the property is established, that informs what should be paid for insurance.
Right.
Insurance, that should be an insurance cover for the building. As the amount, I think what the insurance professional is saying should be what the law says. If you take an insurance on a property of that kind, it must also stipulate the use of which you want to put it. But sadly, I know the insurance commission has only given about 10,000 or so for that. But that should have not been the case. It should have been to be ensured to the true reinstatement value of the building and those who may be harmed due to the collapse of the property.
Right. So, Mr. Amegado, I know that your institution has members who live by the various laws of this country. Really, over the past years, what has your association been doing to encourage members of your association to implore their clients to be insurance worthy?
Thank you very much. You know, if you get to most establishments, they have estate officers. Most of these, in fact, by...
Well, I think we've lost Humphrey Amegado again. We'll take a snappy break, and when we return, we'll still continue the relevance of insurance in the aftermath of the Malcolm disaster. Stay with us. Don't go. Express tonight on Corporate Wednesday, we're discussing the relevance of insurance in the aftermath of the Malcolm disaster. We've been able to raise Humphrey Amegado back on the line. Humphrey is the Honorary Secretary of the Ghana Institution of Surveyors. Good evening and thanks for coming back on the line, Humphrey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was asking what measures you have in place to ensure that your members make their clients insurance worthy.
Yeah, as I was saying, that most of our clients and the big establishment businesses, we encourage them to establish estate office, or what they normally call as general services. And these general services heads or estate heads are always surveyors who are coming from valuation and estate surveying divisions. And when they go, one of the professional requirements is to make sure that the property is insured. And all the requirements for insurances, both for the function of the building and the value of the building, are done. And we make sure they are renewed year by year so that you don't miss payment of the contributions, and then when there is a disaster, you are not ready. Apart from that, we interact with a lot of organizations. Executives visit government establishments, we visit other business houses, and when we go, all these things are made. I mean, quite recently, we made a visit to the office of the National Security Coordinator. These were some of the issues we raised, problems in the banks and problems like this. And there is an interaction to ensure that we make a visit to one of the meetings of district assemblies all over the country to make some of these points. We've also been running some press conferences once a while to make some of these things known. And wherever our members are, these are so it's generally a point we make. But see, as an institution, we are now working on the Survey Council bill. So from that point of view, we don't have a backing by law.
Sorry, you're saying that you are working on what bill?
Survey Council bill.
Survey Council bill, right?
Yes.
And what's that supposed to do?
That is supposed to give us the muzzle to enforce some of these things.
So currently you are unable to enforce anything.
We can only encourage and advise and employ and beg people to ensure that these things are done. And
lobby also, right?
And lobby people that this is done. Some form of advocacy. But actually, we should, as an institution.
But what has taken you so long to make this recommendation so you can have a regulatory regime?
Mr. Host, we have been working on this for the past 16 years. But the good news is that the bill is now with Cabinet, ready to be pushed through.
So this bill has been with Cabinet way before the Malcolm collapse, right?
Yeah, before the Malcolm.
Right, so after the Malcolm collapse, do you now sit back and think that there are some repeals or reviews that you have to put into those recommendations?
No. We are not going to charge the law. I think the law is okay. It gives us enough provisions and protections to enforce what we think from the professional point of view are right measures and right things to point out. It will eliminate, some both fraud and poor haphazard construction and things like that. We can't enforce them because if we see and we say this thing doesn't look right, the law allows us to pursue and bring the proper solution that we think are right.
Right. So let's take, for example, the typical situation of the Malcolm building. Now, if it is proving that the building had structural defects and yet the building is insured, who should be taking the responsibility? Your institution or the insurers?
You see, the insurers go through some process before they insure the building. Just like if you are taking life insurance or an insurance cover for your mortgage, you are supposed to go and do some medical examination for them to test whether you go as far as doing HIV so that they can know that your life can be prolonged to this point. One of the things about insurance is that insurance also is an additional measure put in place to make sure the building that is done to some quality measure. But if the insurers are there and they go through the right process, they would have inspected the property, they would have made some tests here and there to be sure that what they want to insure is good. If it is not, what they normally do is to raise the premium for the building.
So yes, continue,
sir. If they have gone through all this, I think at this stage that the building has collapsed, and if the owners have been regular with their premiums, the insurance, the insurer will not have any reason to renege on his obligations at this time.
Right. So, Ms. Amegado, I'll ask you one last question, then we'll keep you on the line for a while.
Yes. Okay.
I want to know whether, in the event of this Malcolm incident, you do not feel that there is now a basis for renewed urgency to push through this law you're telling me about.
Totally. We have, with great speed, we had even had an appointment in June to meet our late president to take a courtesy call. But one of the cardinal things we're going to discuss with him was the passage of this law, because by then, since somewhere April, the bill was with Cabinet. So we wanted them to get our review. And if you look at the Green Book of the government, you realize that the Service Council law is one of the bills they intend to pass before they leave office in December this year. So we have been pushing, and now the agency, if we are even making an additional effort to see whether we can visit the president and still make a case, because this is a national disaster, and we cannot take this lying down to allow so many gaps to be in the country. For example, the lack of Service Council law, unavailability of Service Council law. We cannot do anything that can prevent or could prevent an incident like this. But if the law is there, it stops that gap or it stops that vacuum, and we can also be an additional, protective instrument,
Right. Thank you, Humphrey Amegado. We'll still keep you on the line for a while, and later on in the show, we'll come back to you for more discussions. Thank you very much, Humphrey. So let's get back to the studio. Mr. Redu, I put a question to him, which I feel that it's fair as an insurance professional for you to perhaps give us some insight into that. I asked whether in the event that the Malcolm building is proving that it has structural defects and yet it has an insurance cover. What does this mean? Does this mean it's very possible that they won't get the insurance claim?
No, certainly not so. You see, when a risk is proposed, we have what we call, I think what he was trying to say, the surveyors. The surveyors need to go to the scene, the risk, examine it, look at everything about it, and then make their recommendations as to whether you got to accept this risk or not. If you think there are certain things that needs to be put in place, you make a recommendation to the insured or the proposed client that you need to do this, you need to do that. Maybe we realize that the structure as it's designed, exit points may be so much of a problem. If there's a disaster here, what are you going to do? We realize you need some amount of fire extinguishers. We think you need this, you need that. So you put this before the client. And if the client meets those conditions, you say, fine, you go ahead and then issue the policy. If you fail to do that and you go ahead and issue the policy, you are still liable. You understand? You have a duty to inspect the risk that is proposed to you for insurance. You go and survey the place. If you fail to do that, right, so far as you've gone ahead to issue the policy, and the consideration has taken place.
It's a seal of the deed.
That is it. So as the problem comes, you can't run away from that.
Right.
Good. But then I was saying something before our brother came on air. When we were talking about the workman's compensation, the workman's compensation does not deal with negligence. But then when negligence comes in, there's a provision, which is the common law. And that common law, in this particular case, is established. One, according to some of the survivors, they did say that 3 days to the unfortunate event, they saw cracks in their building.
When you say common law, for the benefit of our listeners, you want to say that there is an option availability for you to use the court system if the situation falls into a negligence case, right?
Yes, it's very simple.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that was because one, the employer has a duty of care.
Yeah.
Okay, he has a duty of care. The employer must make sure that you are working in a safe environment, devoid of hazards. You got it. And as I said,
so that's a basic obligation for every employer.
For every employer.
You have to, if you're able to, well, I mean, the way negligence works is that if you're able to establish there is a duty of care.
That is it. Now, here's what as they said, 3 days to the unfortunate event, they saw cracks in the building and they called the attention of the
supervisors.
And then they said all they need to do is
plastering.
This is a clear case of negligence.
So the insurance company won't pay?
No, not that the insurance company won't pay. What I'm saying, this is the difference between the workman's compensation, because the workman's compensation does not deal with negligence. Okay? But the common law, which is the tort, deals with negligence. And in that case, your compensation is higher because workman's compensation is limited. This one, the issue of even emotional trauma comes in.
Could be roped in.
It could be roped in. I mean, it's clear. right? Because as I was saying this afternoon,
but if you pursue a negligence case in this instance, who would be the respondents? Will it be the company, Malcolm,
exactly,
or the owner of the building?
Malcolm, you are an employee, so it is your employer. It's your employer who owes you that duty of care. It is your employer who must make sure that your working environment is conducive.
Well, Mr. Radio, I'm told that we have Achu Menya Wovo back on the line. Achu is the CEO of the Ghana Insurance Association. I am afraid we lost him again, and we're still trying to raise him. So you were saying that in this case, Malcolm will be the respondent.
Exactly.
But the question I want to ask is that if, for example, there's a victim, there's the family of a victim who, let's say, died. There are two instances where there is incapacitation, the victim did not die. There's a loss of limb or anything of that sort. And then there is the situation where the victim dies. Now, in the situation the victim dies, is it something that the family can choose to use the court as against going through the other process of getting an insurance through the workman's compensation? Is there a choice?
Both options are for you. Both options are for you. You can exercise both. But then what normally happens is that why I say people should not waste their time going through the workman's compensation and should go straight to the common law.
Is that you get little?
No, not that you get it. What actually happens is that the workman's compensation, as I said, is limited. Okay? But then the common law is
broad.
Depending on
the extent of negligence.
Yes, depending on this. I mean, how you can prove your case, right? Then the court will give its award, right? But then the point is that if you exercise both, whatever amount that the court will give you under the common law, the workman's compensation figure will be deducted from it. You understand?
That's a very interesting learning.
You see, it will be so don't waste your time going here and then go there. Go straight there. When you take it, it's once and for all.
Right. Roxin Dogbega is Technical Chairman, Association of Building and Civil Engineering Contractors of Ghana. He's also on the phone lines. We hope that we can get him. Good evening, sir, and thanks for joining us on PM Express.
Good evening.
So thank you. So the Association of Building and Civil Engineering Contractors of Ghana, what's your reaction or response to this Malcolm collapse situation?
Well, the Malcolm collapse, it's one of the wake-up calls for stakeholders and government that there is a need to regulate the construction industry in Ghana. About 2 years ago, we launched this campaign advocating for the need to sanitize the construction industry.
Oh dear, I beg your pardon. I apologize to our audience. We're having technical challenges with our phone lines, and we keep tripping and losing our experts on the phone. We'll try and raise them again. So, Mr. Redu, well, I beg your pardon. I keep interrupting to go back onto the phone lines. So you were telling us that, I mean, the options are there. Both options are there for any victim to exercise
your rights under the
and that you shouldn't bother to wasting your time.
Yeah, but also,
going
what
through
is the point going
compensation.
through it? Because you see, what happens is that if you go through the workman's compensation, you are paid what you do. But when you go under the common law, whatever figure that is awarded, that amount that was paid to you. So, okay, let's say workman's compensation, you are giving 10,000. All right. Then common law says, okay, you are entitled to 100,000. They will deduct the 10,000 from it and give you 90. So instead of wasting time going here and going there, go straight to this one, right? And then when you collect it, you know what you're going to do.
That's going to be huge. If, for example, 70 people were injured, I'm just talking about those who were incapacitated or suffered any form of injury in the first place. If 70 people were injured and 14 people died, if all the families of these victims decide to take advantage of the common law and go to court and sue for negligence, Malcolm should be crumbling.
Why should it crumble? It shouldn't crumble. It shouldn't crumble at all.
Why?
Well,
because the suit might be huge.
no amount of money can compensate for
A life.
And to avoid such things, business concerns, as I said, you owe it a duty to your employees. You have a duty of care towards your employees. So the lessons are that anyone going to rent a place or anyone putting up a structure to accommodate people, and also that they are even lucky, because if this thing had happened, let's say around 10 o'clock, where members of the public are actually in there, and you realize that you have probably about 300 to 400 people in there, what was going to be the fate of these people? You see, so it is a lesson that catches all of us. So to every employer or anyone, I want to believe that if you go and even rent a property to live in, you will be very careful. You will look around to make sure that what amount of money you're paying as rent is actually commensurate to the property you're going to live in.
And the safety it provides.
Exactly. You want to make sure that all these things are in place. So if they have failed to have done that examination, they must be prepared for it.
They should bear the consequences.
They should bear the consequences.
Well, we'll take a short break and we'll continue when we return. Stay with us. Mr. Radio, before we went off, we were saying that it is very possible that Melcom in a situation like this, and if it was any other company, the volume of legal suit against it in the event of a negligence could lead a company to fall down, really, because the claims might be too much.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, they could go for a loan to take care of their liabilities and then bounce back in business. After all, they have other branches that they operate in. But, you know, as I said earlier, the smart guys would pass this risk to an insurer. You understand? The smart guys will pass this risk to an insurer. And you would be amazed. I mean, most of the big corporate, firms, they do that. But one of the things I realize is that under the workman's compensation, most companies are not even going for it. You get it? I'm not going for it. And that law actually needs to be looked at again.
When you say they're not going for it, they're not making the choice to abide by the workman's compensation, or victims are not applying to
No. What I mean is that, you see, the workman's compensation, as I said, that one is the law of the land.
It is binding on any company. It is binding
on any company. The smart guys pass that risk to the insurance company. But the insurance itself has its own policy. And that is the personal accident policy, or the ones that the corporate will take, which is the group personal accident policy. So those ones are actually insurance policies. This one is a risk that is being passed on to the insurance companies to underwrite. The common law aspect, if you understand it clearly, you pass that risk also to the insurer, so that wherever the suit comes from, you are actually, covered, right? But what I'm saying is this, that the workman's compensation law itself must be looked at again, because there are some controversies in the acts. One of the things is, the law says, when someone is coming to work, or someone is leaving work, and the person gets injured, right? He's covered under that policy. But the question that arises is, someone leaves work, you say you've closed work at 5 o'clock. The next thing you hear, the person got injured around 9:30. The controversy comes in.
Is this covered? That's the question.
That is the issue.
So if I leave my office, for example, in performing a duty for my company, and let's say I finish and I'm on my way home, and I involve in an accident as a result of having finished work. Am I covered?
That is what I'm saying. The controversies come in there, right? The other aspect of it is where you have been asked to go and perform a job maybe in the Volta region.
And you had an accident in Eastern region?
No, not even that. I mean, you're going to Volta region. You're going to perform a job there. They say go there for 3 days and come back, right? You have left your normal abode, which is Accra, and you've gone to the Volta region. You've gone to do a job. The job you're doing is like that you work from 8 to 5 and then you close, all right? So you go to your hotel. But maybe around 8 o'clock, you're hungry, so you want to go out there to buy some banku or something. And in the process of going, you get yourself involved in an accident. two schools of thoughts are here. Someone believes that for the mere fact that you are in the Volta region, it is your employment that has sent you there.
Yeah.
So regardless of the time, right?
And that's fair. That makes sense, right?
Whatever happens to you, you are covered. Some other person also believes that, look, you've closed work and you've closed. So if it happened to you around this time when you've gone back to your residence and you're going out there, it means you're on a frolic of your own. Controversy.
And there is an exclusion.
Yes, all these things. It is unnecessary. You see, the Labor Department or the Ministry of Employment, you know, they need to go back, sit down and look at that particular law.
Review
it and let it be explicit so that we know what you're covering and then what you're not covering. You got it? Now, the other thing too is this. From what has happened now, the National Insurance Commission has a duty to sit up immediately and review that subsection 2 of section 184 that asks owners and occupiers of these commercial buildings to make provision for that third-party liabilities, the legal liabilities. Because, as I said, you have given them a minimum figure of 10,000. And how do you expect 10,000 to take care of this multitude?
400 people, for example.
It doesn't make sense. So what happens is that you could categorize it. I said, if you take Accra Sports Stadium has a capacity of about 80,000. So for such a place, what should be the minimum figure that you should have as your public liability limit? When you go to a place like the cinema hall, what is the sitting capacity there? So what figures are we looking at? We are having these buildings. Today, let's take one long building like Trust Towers.
Trust Towers.
City House, the World Trade Center, shopping malls. Look, at any given time, how many people do we expect to be in such structures, right? So you begin to categorize and say that the minimum each one should have should probably be 1 million Ghana cedis. Then, of course, you could say that invariably you are getting close to some adequate compensation. But sadly enough, this thing happened about a week now. NIC has not spoken. Do we want another one to happen again? So you are asking us, what lessons have we learned or are we learning? And it saddens me.
What lessons must we be learning? Maybe I should put that.
And that's exactly what I'm telling you now, that they should realize that what they brought out. So today, the policy that the owner of the building took, right, was as a result of what UNIC has brought. And that policy does not compensate the third parties adequately. Would you blame the owner for it?
So are you foreseeing that there are a lot of the victims in this Malcolm disaster who might go home empty-handed?
No.
It's very possible.
No. They will not go empty-handed. The problem you have is this, as I said.
So, let's speculate. How much are you expecting that each person who died or each person who sustained some level of incapacitation should be raking in terms of insurance?
Well, as I said, when it comes to the workman's compensation, that one is limited.
It's limited.
Because for those who died, it is a pure 5-year salary.
Well, there were reports that Malcolm Limited is to receive a little over $500,000 as insurance compensation for its goods lost in last week's disaster.
That is good.
That does not cover the
That does not cover the human beings. That is their goods. But as I said, if they have a workman's compensation policy, if they don't even have it, the Labor Department will still compute and will send it to Malcolm and say, for Mr. X, this is the amount of money you got to pay them. And as you were just giving that little analysis here, if somebody's salary is 100 Ghana, right, then that is a 5-year salary. What is it really going to look like, right? But as I said earlier, due to the fact that negligence is clearly in this case, when you take up the common law, they become the tortfeasor. And then, if you're able to put your case across, because emotional trauma and all those things are in there, a good lawyer can get some good compensation for them.
Now, as our country grows, we're gradually moving towards middle income. We are lower middle income.
We are lower.
They tell us.
We are
now,
going higher.
A lot of high-rise structures, as a result, might be springing up. The demand for office spaces, the demand for high-flying professionals who will require, you know, decent accommodation, high-rising flats like Villaggio, for example. These could be springing up all across the country very soon. What should we be looking at in terms of insurance to make sure that all these risks are factored?
First of all, we needn't even encourage these high-rise buildings.
Why?
Until recently, the highest our fire tenders could go was 4 floors, right? The recent tenders that it took now can go 8 floors. So if you have a building that springs beyond the 8th
I once
floor.
stayed in a hotel in New York, and I was on the 45th floor.
Good.
It shouldn't be bad for us to have such a structure in Ghana.
There isn't a problem in having that structure. But the thing is that, as you're asking, do we have the equipment to deal with the situations when they arise? So here's a situation where 45th floor, the tallest ladder you have on your turntable there is 8 floors. So the fire starts at the 20th floor, rising up. What's going to happen to all of you there?
You die.
Totally. So not until we've been able to get equipment to deal with these matters, why should we encourage it? The next thing is this. I ask myself this question. Look at all these our sky-rise, these tall buildings. You have what? Communication gadgets on top of all of them. That even if it becomes necessary that a helicopter should land somewhere there to evacuate people, the helicopter cannot even land.
Because they are telecom masts.
They put everything in there, you see? So you are asking, I wish, you know, our brothers who spoke earlier, you know, some of these things, you know, would have asked them, is this the right thing to do, right? Look at CD House. All sort of communication gadgets standing in there. Trust towers, what? Name them. All these tall buildings, we have them there. And as I said, our ladder can go only 8 floors. So what is happening to the remaining ones up there? Our prestigious, what do you call it, Job 600, right? That is being refurbished and all that. It's more than 8 floors. And on top of the Job 600 too, you still have all sort of funny things there. So if people are caught from the 9th floor going, the fire is raging, like what we saw in the Foreign Affairs building.
So these are warning signals.
So yeah, so you know, it's something we got to think deep into it. We got to think deep into it.
Well, thank you very much, Edgar Oredo. He's an insurance professional. You heard also earlier on the phone Humphrey Amegado, who is Honorary Secretary of the Ghana Institution of Surveyors, and we were joined briefly by Roxanne Dubega, who is Technical Chairman of the Association of Building and Civil Engineering Contractors. Thanks to you for making time with us on PM Express Corporate Wednesday. Join us again tomorrow for another interesting edition of PM Express. Constituency Watch follows right after. Good night.